From CheatGPT panic to AI tutors that double learning gains, what if the bots could fix school instead of ruin it? All right, welcome humans to episode 5 of the Neuron Podcast. I am Corey Noles, the editor of the Neuron, and riding shotgun as always is our resident word slinger, Grant Harvey. How's that classroom vibe today, Grant?
Good. I'm ready to learn. Or is it ready to teach? I don't know.
It's a good question. I guess we're going to figure that out here in just a little bit. So today, everyone, we're ditching the doom scroll headlines about CheatGPT and broken classrooms to ask the contrarian question. What if AI could actually fix school? We'll start by laying out some cracks in the modern education system, from overworked teachers and one-size-fits-all pacing to brand new headaches that AI has uncovered and introduced us to. We see you over there, copy-pasted essays. So, then we're going to flip the script a little bit and explore how the very same tech that might unleash 24/7 personal tutors, mastery-based progress, and a shift from cramming facts to honing judgment. So, by the end of this episode, you'll have some fresh takes, practical guardrails, and maybe a little optimism for that next parent-teacher night. So whether you're a lifelong learner, a burnout teacher, or simply AI curious, let's grab a seat here because class is in session. All right, so Grant, would you mind walking us through the problems that educators are seeing right now?
Yeah. I mean, you summed it up with copy and paste essays, but I have a video that that I think kind of summarizes this whole thing, and then we'll get into it from there. So I'm going to share my screen. So this is a video from the UCLA graduation that happened about a month ago now, and this is what happened. So the teleprompter goes to this guy. His name is Andre Mai, and on his screen right there is ChatGPT.
That
So he
got me
is
through the whole
flexing.
year or something, isn't it? Isn't that the...
He's flexing his use of ChatGPT.
After his diploma's in his hand, I hope?
Yeah, so that's the actual UCLA graduation. So apparently you can get a degree. I think the term is conferred or revoked after that point. So he doesn't actually have it at the point that this video was taken. However, there's some nuance here. But obviously, if you're just watching that and you see that for the first time, you're like, oh, okay, cool. This kid is actively flaunting his use of ChatGPT to graduate. Like,
It feels like a really bad move to do that to me.
yeah. Yeah, it comes across really bad. And of course, this went viral. I mean, you see here, this video has like 8.6 views just on Reddit. It was originally on Instagram. I mean, teachers everywhere flipped out over this. It was a big controversy. But it turns out that not all is as it appears. And what happened here was actually Andre Mai, who's the student, is a computer science, particularly AI researcher. So he was actually using AI for an AI class, and as he said in a video in collaboration with OpenAI, he was actually using it with his teacher's permission.
Oh, wow. See, that's
Yeah.
that lightens the blow a little bit, and hopefully keeps his degree for him.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically what this kind of shows is that this topic is like a huge lightning rod.
Yeah.
And, while he was just using AI literally at graduation to finish an assignment that was due that night, he was summarizing all of the equations and formulas that he had to write for his computer science class. He was putting all of that together for the assignment that was due that night. And when the cameras came and were filming him, he basically just flipped around his laptop and he was showing them what he was working on. And then, of course, the crowd went wild, so he just went for it. But that image in and of itself is so striking because it hits on a nerve that a lot of teachers everywhere and everybody, society at large, you could say, is really concerned about, which is this idea of college students using ChatGPT to cheat their way through school. And I think right now, the assignment or the last statistic I read is that 90% of college students admit to using ChatGPT.
Wow. When I was in college, there were lots of students that one of the big things was sites where you could buy essays. They were a huge problem when I was in college. And And, and you heard all of the same things. Oh, they're all bad. They're very general. But, generally they were uploaded with, graded and with how many people had gotten this passed and the grades they had got listed under it. I mean,
Wow.
it was absolutely awful, but at the same time, no matter what your system is, there's a percentage of people who are always going to be looking to skirt it, to find the easy way
Totally.
around. And I don't think it's a thing you just turn off. I think it's as much human as it is about the technology. It's just that the technology now does it way better.
Yeah. That's true, yeah. You don't even need humans to upload their essays, you can have ChatGPT write it for you. But it begs the question, I mean, yes, of course, there's always gonna be loopholes in every system and ways to try and cheat that system, but, if 90% of students, because how many students really bought essays back in the day, do you think?
That's a good question. I don't know. I
I would guess maybe less than
It's
10%,
probably in
5%.
the 10% range, if even, is my guess. I mean, they were
That even feels
advertised
high, right?
everywhere. There were posters hanging for them on walls. You'd watch them get ripped down in the college all the time. Uh, it
That evokes, Operation Varsity Blues too, do you remember
Yeah,
that? Where the that was when the parents were in on it, and they were paying, tutors and people to help get their kids into colleges.
yeah,
Slightly different
come take
situation,
tests
but
for you.
same.
It's a thing that happened in the real world not long ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Now it's easier than ever, basically. But the main crux of this is, of course, there's always gonna be students who cheat or try to shortcut things. But what is the purpose of education and a degree if you can have ChatGPT do like 90% of your work? I'm not saying that's what the students are using
Yeah.
it for, but let's just say like if 90% of your work and learning in school is like memorization and writing essays and proving that you've learned the things that you've learned, if you can do all of that with ChatGPT, and once you go out into the real world, you're using it in the workplace, what is the purpose of going to school to begin with? Is sort of the question that a lot of people are asking.
And, my guess is of that 90%, not all of them are necessarily using it to cheat. I'll bet a shocking number of them are.
Yeah.
But I doubt it's 90, and I mean, it also depends on what you would call cheating. Some people consider any use of such a thing to be cheating, but I think there are definitely quality applications as well that make a lot of sense, but yeah, that's a good question. If, and I think what you've led into here is kind of my view that I think there's a fundamental problem with the way education works today and the way it's going to need to work in a world where every answer is at the fingertips of every student.
Uh-huh.
I think what we've done is we have a system that's so strongly built on both testing and proving that something is being learned, and it's there's a lot of memorization. And I think the key element that kids are going to need to leave school with tomorrow, well, today, frankly, this May, they should have been already, is a stronger ability to learn on their own. I think that's what
Mm,
matters. I think at the very core of this is, I was a philosophy student in college, and uh, one of the things that's the real takeaway from that, like, I caught a lot of flack from folks about, "What are you gonna do with that?" And, I always had a joke to come back with, but the truth of the matter is it's been very beneficial over the years because it turns out, in retrospect, when I look back on it, it's more of a degree in learning to think and look at problems differently from angles you might not have considered, from other people's angles, trying to it's learning to learn and learning to accept what you don't know. Uh, and in a world where you can absolutely, you know, pull an app out of your phone or talk to your glasses and
mm,
get any answer you need immediately, I mean, clear to the PhD level, it you need a new approach, which I think
totally.
ties right into the MIT study of the last week or
Yeah.
so. Or not the
Yeah.
last week or so, but I think it came out in June. Um, and kind of what they found was this idea that heavy reliance on AI and tools is going to weaken your neural engagement. What they did, just the nuts and bolts of the study real quick, is they took 56 people and separated them into 3 groups. Group A, I don't know which group was which, but each of these groups, one of them had to write an essay with no assistance whatsoever, just from their mind. The next group did it using Google search. The following group did it with access to ChatGPT. And then 4 months later, they brought back, I think it's 13 of those people, and had them rewrite the essay in an opposite way. And the people who had used ChatGPT did markedly worse. The people who had used Google search did about the same. And the people who had used nothing the previous time did better.
Oh,
So, at its
so what does that
core,
mean?
that's 13 people.
Yeah, right. Small sample size.
It's a
Yeah.
very small sample size in a very specific situation. I think the headline sparked a lot of fear on that one.
Yeah, I mean, and we kind of playfully when we ran a story on that, we said like, "This is your brain on ChatGPT," and you know, a lot of times like we've read a couple studies now where it's like, does using ChatGPT make you dumber? There was famously a Microsoft study that kind of shown that people who were using ChatGPT were also not feeling like they were learning anymore, and they were getting stuck, and they were becoming reliant on it, and a lot of fatigue kind of set in. And I think that can happen depending on how you use it, but as far as, like, what the study actually showed, some people took this to mean that it's, like, showing brain damage in people who use it, or it got kind of wildly and
Oh,
misinterpreted.
it did. So
Ethan Mollick.
bad.
Yeah, yeah, Ethan Mollick is a Wharton professor and one of the foremost, like, AI people talking about AI and how it impacts business and education and all sorts of things. He's been kind of on a soapbox about this the last couple of weeks, that there are studies that show it's not just the use of AI as like a point blank problem, it's how you use it that is
Yeah.
really important. And he said, like, yeah, if you use it to shortcut your thinking, of course that those 13 people aren't gonna actually learn anything, like, because they had the robot write for them. There was no connections made for them. It was just like it wrote it, you know.
Yeah, and some of that may be even in the character of the user. There's probably, people who are more I wonder if how that compares to people who are naturally pretty reliant and quickly trusting of what they read or of what they find on Google. The truth is my experience since we'll say ChatGPT's release has been that I've used these tools to learn about things I don't know that I'd have ever bothered to learn about otherwise. Like, it makes it so simple. You can just have a random thought and lead yourself down a rabbit hole for hours. And while sure there's, an element of hallucination and issues with time, I'm still, I believe, between that and, reading and watching documentaries and all of the various ways people learn that, if you want to learn, this can really make that easy.
I agree. I think the counterpoint that I would make to that is that um the question is really like, yes, AI makes access to information easier than ever, even easier than Google, if you can believe it. But how much of that is actually retained? Like for the students who went away, let's say they actually wanted to learn the topic that they were writing the essay on, and let's say they liked what they wrote and they thought it was good and they read it and they were like, yeah, this is pretty good and I learned something. But then X amount of months later, they come away and they actually didn't remember it. This kind of goes to the Google effect where, a lot of times, like the way that our brain works, we will remember where we found information. We won't remember the information itself because we say, oh, it's on Google. So all I need to remember is that if I need to go back and find that, I just go to Google. And maybe you even remember the search terms that you used or the website that it was on, but you don't necessarily dedicate the brain power. And this is something that happens, subconsciously. You don't dedicate the brain power to remembering the fact. You just know, oh, I know where it is in case I need to go get it again.
Yeah, and that's a thing, but I mean, I would say that about decent amount of my traditional education too. Like
That's fair.
like, at the same time, there are an awful lot of things that I was taught over the years or learned, but I wouldn't say that I learned them, necessarily. Like, there are things I don't remember. Now, there are a lot that stick, I don't mean that as, like, a discounting of it, uh, but just like with anything, when you read a book, you don't remember the book. You remember the characters, you remember elements, you remember scenes, you remember exchanges, and you remember things about it, but there are always gonna be elements that slip through, and I think
Sure.
for me, with AI, it's very much been about what your approach to it is, I think, is where it's going to really come down. I think there are people who will use it in a way that absolutely keeps them from flexing their intellectual muscle in the way that they
Mm.
probably need to be. Um,
Mhm.
but I equally hope that what it will do, and this kind of ties into a point I was going to make in a little bit here, that I think there are a lot of people who will have an opportunity at an easier way to learn that is more engaging, is more tailored to their specific learning needs and struggle points that may come out that might be people who would have slipped through the cracks traditionally.
Sure. Yeah, that's totally fair. Actually, Ethan Mollick, so we mentioned him a minute ago. He's been on a soapbox about the study being misinterpreted. He points to a study that's related to what you were just talking about. That was specifically about when students are given unguided ChatGPT versus when they're given a teacher assisted, teacher guided tool that basically the teachers designed specifically to help learning. And the results are very fascinating. So let's dive into
Ooh,
this.
yeah.
So this was a Wharton study about nearly 1,000 students in Turkey who used ChatGPT for, so this was an older version of it, for math over 4 months. And so there was two different versions. There's ChatGPT Base, which is regular ChatGPT,
Mhm.
and then there's ChatGPT Tutor, which was the tutor with the guardrails that the teachers had a say in and helped design.
Yeah.
And so ChatGPT Base boosted practice performance by about 48%. But GPT Tutor delivered a 127% improvement during practice. And on the actual
Wow.
exams, without AI, GPT based students performed 17% worse than kids who never used AI at all.
Wow.
Okay. So if you were just left to your own devices and didn't use AI at all, you would perform better than these kids who used AI. Now, GPT tutor students returned to baseline. They were no better or no worse without the AI to help them. But it goes to show that, if you use it in the right way, you're still keeping up with you're not getting that cognitive decline as MIT
Yeah.
calls it.
Yeah, no cognitive decline. I think that's intriguing, and also, I'm anxious to see the difference in how that works when you add in overtime. I think that
Right.
might change things too. I mean, something that I harp on quite regularly is the idea that, resistance to using certain tools in a classroom is nothing new at all. The truth of the matter is this is old news. Calculators in the 20th century. People were worried about the same things we're worried about right now: skill erosion, issues with access. Will everyone have access to the tool? Fair question. They were afraid it was going to underline learning or undermine learning. Excuse me. And the truth is, it could also people who were in favor of it at that time talked pretty regularly about the idea that it could help students access higher level concepts earlier by using a calculator for the basics. Um, Similar thing happened with personal computers. Cost and infrastructure for small school districts was a big issue early on. Access to computers was an issue because not everybody had one in the home. Some did. That disproportionately benefited people who had the means and affected those who didn't for a longer period of time. Um, but there was also, a teacher knowledge gap for a number of years. And I remember being in high school during the computers are pretty new era. And I mean, I remember students like myself and a couple of other friends working on our classroom computers, trying to get things fixed when there were problems. Like it wasn't a thing they knew yet. They were working to upskill and to get those skills. But as is often the case, the kids sometimes know the tech better than the grown-ups.
Yeah, it's true.
Um,
Yeah.
but I would not argue in any way that, there were concerns about distraction and superficial learning. And I don't believe in any way you would say that about a computer looking 35 years out, 30 years out now on a computer in a classroom.
Yeah, I mean, I remember in school going to the computer lab when we had the colorful iMacs. I'm dating myself a little bit. Um,
I remember those.
and and learning a bunch of stuff on the computer that was valuable to this day. I mean, 90% of the jobs I've ever had have had to do with computer work. So clearly, if you're learning the tool in school, that can then be applicable as long as that tool is used in
Yeah.
the workplace. So in theory, if there is a place for these tools in school and they're definitely being used in the workplace, then it is important for kids to be using them and having access to them. To your point about the PC, think about all the kids who didn't have access to the PC
Yeah.
at that time. They were at a disadvantage compared
Mhm.
to kids who did.
Absolutely.
Bill Gates famously said that, right? About his success. He's like, the only reason that I'm successful, or one of the only reasons, is that I was lucky enough to go to a school that had this type of computer at this time so that I could tinker with it, test it out, and then take that knowledge and turn it into Microsoft. So it is kind of a big deal to have access to this stuff and crucially be able to use it.
It is. And, that's changed over time. Smartphones really changed that. Smartphones
Mm.
really put computing power in the hands of just close to I'm not going to say everyone because there are absolutely people out there who struggle and don't have them, but it closed the gap significantly over what it was when we were just talking about household computers. Like, I was very fortunate. We were very much a working class family, but my dad was a bit of a computer nerd just as a hobby on the side. So, like, I mean, I grew up with a Commodore 64 in the house, and I mean, I remember playing on those as a little kid. I just dated myself back to the early 80s, but
No, those are sweet.
I mean, I remember that and working our way up through we had an Apple at one point, I can't remember which model, and then into, like, a Tandy 286 from Radio Shack, and being all excited about it. Getting
Yeah.
color for the first time, getting Windows for the first time was a big thing.
Oh yeah.
And, and I definitely had a leg up on other people as a result at that time, just because I'd been around them, and so did my friends, because my friends came around our house, and that was what we did on the weekends, was just goof around with computers. I think it'll be interesting. I think when we're 30 years out from today, we'll look at it probably in a similar way, likely way less than 30 years, because, there was never a period where there was a free version of a PC, let alone a free version that was good, like most of the AI tools. I mean, if you have a couple of companies you hate, that's fine. But most of these have a free option that if you have a phone, you can at least get to it, you can learn to use it. Um, while it's not perfect, I will say it might be the most accessible tech we've seen before in terms of along this path line from calculators and computers. Calculators got up there pretty quick, but I mean, they weren't cheap in the beginning. You didn't buy a calculator at the dollar store like you do now. I mean, it was, they were a thing.
Especially what is it, Texas Instruments?
And they're still a
Yeah.
fortune. You can still go buy
Yeah.
a TI-85 and spend a fortune on it.
Yeah, it might also be cheaper to just get a smartphone
I
that
say
has the
that. It
same
might be
functions.
I think the price is cheaper than they used to be, so maybe they've gotten a little more
Mm.
affordable. The tech is definitely better off board than it was on board. Um, it's really interesting, though, and I think this all kind of points back to a few things. There's something I thought I skipped over here that I wanted to hit, and that was that,
Mhm.
there are other issues in education that have made it difficult for a number of years that are completely unrelated to AI. like, having seat time mandates from states and the federal government, with a focus on that over mastery of concepts and, concerns about teacher burnout at understaffed schools that really need the help, equity gaps, and assessment models that date way, way back. I think what AI is going to force, whether anyone likes it or not, and is a fundamental change in how we educate. Probably, I
Mm.
just really feel like with other technologies, there's always been this desire to figure out where it fits in our existing education system. Like, okay, we're going to fit computers into this. And then I get to die of dysentery throughout grade school from playing Oregon Trail all the time. And it was great. But they took it and they fit it into what we were already doing.
Mm.
And that approach assumes that what we're already doing is as good as it can be.
Yeah, you're right. That's like companies adding AI features into products that already exist that were not designed for them,
Yeah.
and the consumers have largely rejected most of these features. Because they're not really they're add-ons. They're not really thought
Yeah.
through.
They
Um,
recognize AI washing pretty quick.
yeah,
Quicker than I thought. That was a fun phase of 2023, 2024 there where, every company just suddenly it was on every brand, and I'm like, "I know you guys have not tooled up because the expertise does not exist on a broad enough scale for you to have the staff to do that."
right.
There were a lot of truth stretching there, I think, and,
Well, I mean, that kind of brings it back to, like, what is the ground truth for the teachers? You mentioned all of those headwinds. I have a couple of things to add, now that AI has been added to the mix. So why was Andre Mai's video so visceral for so many people, especially in education? Well, it's because AI has turned teachers into unwilling AI cops, right? They're using detection software, which is largely unreliable, by the way. A lot of stories have been written about this, that AI detection tools, yeah, sure, they show you something is written by AI, but they're using some sort of weird logic on the back end to try and identify what is AI. And when you put a text in there that appears in the training data, like the Declaration of Independence, it'll say it's 99% written by AI because it has like a very formulaic way that it's written. Well, why does AI write the way that it does? It's because it's been trained on all of this stuff in the past, and it finds like statistical patterns that are common in the way that
yeah.
we write. Um, and so that means that now teachers are using tools that don't work to try and detect AI's tools. And so you get false positives in there. You also get, you're identifying where
Which are
students are using
false
AI.
accusations of cheating that go in a kid's
Right.
permanent record.
Can really hurt you.
Yeah.
And let's say the kid does use AI, right? But let's say English is their first language and they're in a predominantly English speaking school. Well, maybe they're using AI to convey their ideas that they genuinely know in a way that's like well written, that uses good grammar and all of this sort of stuff. So now you have this sort of like system that penalizes kids for not being like perfect in English, for example, even though they might be really good in other subjects. Um, so it's just like this has created a lot of different reactions in the schools. This ranges the gamut from banning AI outright all the way to, using the detection tools, or some teachers are embracing it and a lot more are embracing it. For instance, there was one story that I read where a professor will actually have kids put their first assignment through ChatGPT and use it as a tool to edit their work. They'll write it first and then they'll run it through ChatGPT to sort of see the difference and how it helps you and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. So in that instance, the teacher is sort of embracing, hey, you're going to use this, but make sure you write it yourself
Yeah.
first, and then you can use it to edit it, which is kind of interesting.
I would argue that, companies and schools that are investing significantly in technology to catch people are doing a huge disservice. Like, the truth is catching AI is not it's it it it's not what matters, in my opinion, at least. Let me say that because I know that's gonna rub some people wrong. But just like with cybersecurity and with what we were talking about earlier about how there's always a new way to cheat, those tools are consistently behind. you're going to catch people using AI badly, or you're going to falsely accuse a non-zero number of people of using AI who have not. And I just don't think that risk is worth it. I think it's a bad practice. I think when it comes to, just like we would say in writing the newsletter, good is good, bad is bad, and that's that. Um, Either the work, regardless of how it was made, is quality work, or the work is bad work. Um, and I think the real onus is going to wind up falling on teachers to prepare students to use AI in a way that is beneficial to them, to teach them
Mm,
about
mhm.
responsible use and guardrails, and about using it in a way not that necessarily makes things easier, but that can make them smarter, can help them learn those difficult concepts, can help them, you know, get past that spot they're struggling on in pre-algebra, that spot they just
Mm.
can't get, like, they can't figure out factoring. Factoring was the devil. I had a hard time with it as a young guy, and, I would have loved nothing more than to have had access to the tools available today to help walk me through it. And,
Yeah.
and the truth is, the failure to grasp that concept pretty quickly and easily left me behind for the rest of a year, and it probably prevented me from taking the next step with another math class. You never catch up when you have one of those struggle subjects. Like, I had things I was very good at,
Yeah.
but that was one where it was difficult, and there just wasn't the time to put into helping me understand it, and I never had that epiphany moment that comes, when you're trying to learn something new, but I hopefully AI can give that to a lot of people.
Yeah, this brings up a school that is doing an interesting experiment, which I want to get to
Ooh.
in a second. There's just one other thing I wanted to touch on, which is actually like so there's been studies on homework, right? Homework is another one of those things that's supposed to help you. Because I think I largely agree with what you're saying in that like, look, if you're in the workforce and let's say your job is to accomplish a goal, as long as that goal is done and it's done well, it, the workforce more or less doesn't care how you did it. I mean,
That's
maybe
right.
some company policies care, but if your end goal is to get people to read something, like as long as it's worthy of their time to read it, and people read it and it's good and they like it and they share it, like then it's successful.
That's right.
And the results, the end result is what matters in the workplace. But in school, the end result is a little bit different. The end result is that do you understand, or can you prove to the school that you understand? And I think there's two concepts that we kind of need to wrap our heads around with AI. The first one is like maybe proving it is not the most important part. Maybe actually learning it is the most important part. So how do you get kids to the point where you're no longer trying to prove that you know it, but you're actually learning it? And I think there's a lot of different ideas there that are interesting. Now, where homework comes into play is homework has actually been proven since the rise of the internet to not be as successful or helpful as it has been in the past at helping you learn concepts. In fact, by 2017, it was found that homework only helped 45% of students, and that's down from 86% in 2008 because a lot of people will just copy the answers online. I'm sure it now helps like 0% of students because of ChatGPT. Like, I'm sure this is a no longer useful way to
Yeah,
spend your time
thirteen-year-old
at all.
Corey with his algebra homework wondering about those, you always got the answers to the odd numbered problems and not the even. ChatGPT would have been handling the even ones for me probably as a young punk.
Yeah, so, like, it's just it's not I don't think it's an effective tool anymore. You
Yeah.
could argue that writing essays at home is not an effective tool anymore. So then what do you do in that environment? And that's maybe another topic, we'll get into that, but to your point about, okay, like, let's say, like, you're a student like yourself, or I also struggled with math for a long time, who falls behind, how do you focus, like, okay, if we're saying the focus needs to be on learning, not just proving learning, how do you actually increase learning?
Yeah.
And one school that is testing this in an interesting way is Alpha School. Now, this is not an endorsement of Alpha School, but I thought this was a very, very interesting topic that we wrote about recently. So they use this kind of what's the right way to put it? Kooky
It's a little
process.
kooky.
Yeah, called the 2-hour learning model. And I want to pull up their website because I think it's kind of interesting.
To be clear, I think
We'll
it's a
show
little
this.
kooky in a good way. I think I'm glad to see people trying something new.
All right, so this is 2-hour learning. Okay, so this is a system that's associated with Alpha School and a lot of other private schools. I believe they started in Texas in 2016. And basically, the system says, what if children could crush academics in 2 hours, uh, 2 times faster? Right? That's
Wow.
the pitch. Okay, very interesting. So, how exactly do they do this? Well, basically, they need two things to learn: academics at the right level and pace, and motivation with the right rewards. This is an interesting process. So, here's what this actually looks like. So, they do 2 hours of accelerated mastery in the morning, where students get cracking on 2 hours of AI powered academic sessions, mastering materials 2 times faster. Adults support their independent learning by providing motivation and emotional support while holding them to high standards. And then in the
Interesting.
afternoon, they get the reward, which is just life skills to pursue, passions and interests. So we wrote about this, some of the things that kids said they do. They'll do like wilderness camps in the afternoon. They'll do entrepreneurship classes. Some kids flew all the way out to Chicago to record a podcast with one of their
Hmm.
heroes. I mean, this is K through 8 we're talking about here. And some of these kids are spending this time with guides, or like you could consider them camp counselors, to basically learn life stuff. Financial literacy is another one.
That's so important. I also love that they've included passions and interests because I hated school as a kid. I just hated it. I just didn't feel like I had the time to bother or care. But as an adult, I really developed a passion for learning. And that's not because of what I was being told I needed to learn at the school level, not even at the school level, at the government level is where that's really coming down from in a lot of cases. But what I'll say is that my love for learning came when I had some independence to or realized I just could go learn stuff on my own. And,
Yeah.
I really feel like, if what they wanna do is learn about the history of video games, structure that. Help them learn. Teach them what it's like to do a deep dive into a new subject and kinda learn around it and the various aspects. I like what they're doing. I mean, maybe it's a little squishy. I don't know. I'm not sure, but, I admire the heck out of anyone giving something new a try today because, I'm afraid AI is going to really complicate the way we've been doing things, and that's not the fault of teachers, to be clear. I would argue it's not even the fault of local districts. A lot of that comes from how they're funded and the fact that they have these requirements they have to meet in order to get the money it takes to operate a school. Like when you look at small towns, for example, like I grew up in a small town with less than 2,000 people. School's the biggest business in the town. It
Mm.
employs the most people, most jobs with insurance. It was the biggest chunk of property. It was absolutely the biggest business in the community. And,
Never thought of that before, but yeah, I think that's true for my high school, definitely.
yeah, it's a big thing. And it takes a lot of money to operate that. And a lot of that money comes in, especially in small towns, it's coming from outside of the district, and that means you have to hit these benchmarks. There are certain things you have to do. You have to perform an X rate on testing. You have to have an attendance rate of X that's down to the hour, you know, and,
Mm.
uh, um, and I think that approach has complicated it, and that we're at a point where some sharp minds really need to come together and start looking at what that's going to look like.
Yeah. As far as 2-hour like learning is concerned, they use something that's called mastery learning.
Okay.
So, to your point, like there's a lot of money that comes into the schools that says, you have to do things a certain amount of way. And, even the K through 8, like the actual grade system, it says everyone who's this age is in this grade and they have to learn these topics at this time.
Yeah.
It's time based. And what the mastery system does is it's no longer time based. It's based on, did you master the concept or not? And you
Outcome
only
based.
move
I love
on
it.
outcome based. And you only move on, like everyone's on their own individual track, which would not be possible with teachers. Like to your point, like regular teachers, human teachers could not, that you wouldn't you'd have to have a 1-to-1 ratio of teachers to students to be able to keep track of all this individual learning. Well, the AI system keeps track of your individual track as the student, and you only move on to the next subject once you've proven that you've mastered, again, proven, but once the system thinks that you've mastered the current concept. Then once you've mastered that, then you move on. So, they say students learn twice as fast. Some of the results of this, the top 20% of students show 6.5x growth. So not
Wow.
just 2x is like the average, right? Some are learning 6.5 times faster.
Wow.
The scores are allegedly in the top 1 to 2% nationally. And this is according to the school. This hasn't been independently verified. We're going to see, this started in 2016. So we're going to start seeing these kids go out into the workforce or into the larger education system, higher education, I mean, and in the workforce, we'll see how that actually plays out. Like, do these kids perform better? Are they as equipped as other kids? Are they more equipped than other kids? But it's
Yeah,
interesting. It's an interesting concept.
it is. And high five for trying something. I really, I know I've said that a couple of times, but I there's always such a temptation as humans, as professionals, to stick to exactly what we know and how we've always done a thing. As a writer, I see it every single day. And there's this temptation to be like, well, this is how we've done it, and that means this is the best way. And the fact is, might not be, but you don't know until you try, and you figure out where new technologies, new ideas, new everything kind of fit into the puzzle you have, and whether that's even a scenario that's going to work. It might be that, you know, uh, you need to do something entirely different, but it's not always the case. And I think the real innovators and the quality educators are probably these people who are thinking outside of the box and looking for ways to use the tool to be better at their job, the same way we do with what you and I do every day. I think if you're using it as a way to get better, I think that's gonna be the key.
Yeah, teachers are using AI too, by the way. It's not just
Yes,
and
correct.
it's not just to check students from cheating. In fact, a new Gallup poll came out this year that said 6 in 10 teachers use AI in the past school year.
Wow,
That they use it to save about 6 hours a week,
that's awesome.
on average, and 37% use it for lesson planning. 80% say it saves times on worksheets and assessments, and 64% report better quality when modifying student materials. So they actually 64% actually think they do better at grading their
Wow,
students with AI.
that's awesome. I think that's a great thing. The truth is teachers are overworked. They got a lot of students. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And I mean, while it's absolutely important that, they're reading these things and see with their own eyes how students are performing. Uh, if they were taking some of that same time and able to put that into building out engaging lesson plans or, um, things that would excite these kids about learning, I think it probably benefits everybody in the long run.
No, and to be fair, this is not evenly distributed, right? Because only 32% of teachers use AI weekly, and 40% aren't using it at all. So you gotta ask yourself, like, are we gonna start to see like some of these teachers pull ahead in terms of their level of quality education they can give? And will those teachers be the ones who are sticking with the human only skill set, or will the teachers be the ones who are adapting
That's a
to
good
this current? I
question.
mean, time is only going to tell, right? We're
Yeah.
not going to know that until we start to see how this plays out. But It is going to be an interesting case study, basically.
It really is. Something I think is gonna be big in education is, the idea of an individualized tutor. I think, that you can have a tutor to help you through something difficult, and I talked about this just a little bit earlier, but I wanna expand on it a little.
Yeah, please do.
I think that the ability to have access to a tool that can help you with a problem, even when you're frustrated, that can and I'll go back to factoring as an example, that can teach
Mhm.
me that in one way, and I can just say, I still don't get it. And it can try another way, and then I can say, "I still don't get it," and then it can try another approach, and it can just do that and come up with different examples because it knows you pretty well now, and I think for it to be able to know you, it's also then able to use examples that relate to you, and that's been a big problem with standardized testing for years is the idea that, well, these questions, tend to lean toward these groups and they're not relatable to these groups. And like, AI can fix that's a very solvable problem. You could absolutely have individualized questions based on your own background and such to make sure you understand and take some of that frustration out of learning and even gamify it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I one of my earliest memories of playing video games on a computer and learning was playing the game Math Blasters. Again, dating myself, on like an old school PC,
Yeah.
and in that, you're a little Martian, and there's or you're a little spaceman, and a Martian is like shooting at you, and you have to answer the math problem correctly in order to, defeat him. I mean, that's like the most basic form of AI education, but think about how I mean, it's not AI because it's deterministic functions and whatnot, but I just if you take that concept and you expand on it and you say like, okay, every kid is working on their own pace, on their own subjects and with a tutor that knows them and is learning, and maybe you turn that into games, maybe not, maybe we prove that that's not the right way to go about it, but maybe we do. Um,
Maybe it's something entirely different.
Yeah, that could be a really interesting system, and it could be really beneficial.
If you're having a
Um,
hard time understanding To Kill a Mockingbird, you can use an AI tool and be like, "Listen, I'm not getting it. Talk me through this," or "I need to know these characters. Let's do some flashcards or word association or something that can be
or
this
or
interactive activity."
generate the courtroom and put me in the scene and let me be, like, watching this as it's happening or
Yeah.
be a part of the scene and interacting with it. We're gonna get to that point, and who's to say that that's not more instructive than reading it in a book, you know?
Yeah,
If you're
everyone could
actually
in
part of something.
yeah, you could interview Atticus Finch. You could absolutely,
Yeah.
right now, interview Atticus Finch and be like, "What was it like handling this case?" And it will respond to you as Atticus Finch with all of the context and knowledge we have of him far beyond the book, going into college dissertations and theses and, literary breakdowns over the years. I, uh, I think that's such a cool thing that not enough people do, is to go talk to historical figures. It does that pretty well, and with a
Mhm.
reasonable level of accuracy. I mean, it depends on the model's training data. I mean, you accept that it's probably not perfect. You accept that it's
And that's a
really
key
not Albert
thing.
Einstein, you know?
That's a key thing because the more that I think the more that we're able to do these types of things at scale or quickly, the more that you can create specialized models specifically for these purposes, right? Right now, we're all using these generalized, OpenAI models or Anthropic models or Google models, but who's to say that we couldn't make better small models that are like perfectly trained on Atticus Finch or To Kill a Mockingbird? Like you could create like, and we can get into the news of the week, which is OpenAI's a new announcement
Yeah,
today, but you could go and create specialized models for pretty much every subject you want to learn, actually.
and should.
And that would be and should. And the only reason we haven't done that is because we were still learning how to grow these things in the wild and figure them out. And now we're at a point where I think we probably could and should start making a lot more smaller specialized models to do these types of things.
Yeah, I
Um,
I keep picturing, like, the ability to have an interactive back and forth video chat with Albert Einstein on the general theory of relativity and have him call you by your name and answer questions and talk back and forth and maybe, laugh with you, explain it in kind of his style, sense of humor. Imagine what an awesome learning experience that would be, as opposed to just watching a video or reading a book. I mean, those are still important elements. Absolutely. You should look at the historical footage, you should read historical records and such. But I think that being able to do that opens up that level of education to an awful lot of people who struggle with it today with learning disabilities like, ADHD and, the myriad of learning disabilities that exist.
Mhm,
But to be able to put it in a way that engages people who struggle to focus. Uh,
mhm. Yeah, I think, to your point, I think it's not about, like, a one size solution. I think it's like we have more solutions than we've ever had, actually. Before, we used to only have oral histories of how we taught each other. Then we learned how to write things down, and then we had books, and then we got video and audiobooks and all these sorts of things. Like, now we have computer programs and software and all this sort of stuff. Like, we have so much resources at our fingertips that we should be able to leverage it and use it, no matter what the system is,
yeah,
or what, however you want to learn, you know,
exactly. And it's affordable. It's as
for now,
affordable for now, and I mean,
for now.
I think at the individual level, there's going to always be something that would absolutely do that job well at a price that's bearable. I mean, I think the cost of, large corporate scaling with AI is going to get expensive, but I think at the individual level, maybe not so much. Fingers crossed.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. If there's these like we're talking about, like, hyper specialized learning models that are
Yeah.
specific for, XYZ topic, I think, yeah, you're right. There will remain to be a use case. Do you want to talk about the OpenAI news?
I think we should talk about the OpenAI news.
So, OpenAI just announced today that they've made a new initiative with 400,000 teachers, to shape the future of AI in school. So, this is the blog post here on the screen. They're working with the American Federation of Teachers to launch the National Academy for AI Instruction. Basically, what this means is they're going to partner with this American Federation of Teachers, to train 400,000 K through 12 educators over 5 years. So that's one in every 10 U.S. teachers. They're going to provide 8 million in direct funding and 2 million in computing access and technical support. So that's,
Cool.
like, probably to help, actually run the models and whatnot.
Yeah,
Um, and they've got a flagship facility in New York City, and they're going to expand nationally by 2030. So,
that's awesome. So there's an interesting quote from Sam Altman in there that was pretty relatable to me talking about growing up in St. Louis because that's where I'm at as well. And he says, growing up in St. Louis, my high school computer lab is where I first got curious about AI, mostly thanks to an incredible teacher who pushed me to experiment, even if I broke a few things along the way. Educators make the difference, and they should lead this next shift with AI, and we're here to support them. And I think that's, that really backs up this idea we were talking about that, teachers are going to play a big role in preparing tomorrow's work, as they always do, to be clear, in
yeah.
preparing tomorrow's workers for what this is going to look like. And I'm excited to see AI and AI companies investing there. I'd also like to really quickly just thank them for dropping this article 30 minutes before we started recording this episode with no knowledge it was coming because it made so much sense to talk about here.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Um,
The other quote underneath is kinda interesting too. You wanna read that one?
Yeah, this one's from Randy Weingarten, president of the AFT, and he says that AI holds tremendous promise but huge challenges, which I think is kind of what we've been talking about today. And it's our job as educators to make sure AI serves our students and society, not the other way around. The direct connection between a teacher and their kids can never be replaced by new technologies, but if we learn how to harness it set common sense guardrails, and put teachers in the driver's seat, teaching and learning can be enhanced. And I love
I agree with that.
that. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's a very pragmatic approach. Um, and I like that the idea is that part of this is putting free and accessible tools in the hands of teachers to go learn with, to figure out what education is going to look like. One of the difficulties with AI compared to other technologies that, like, personal computers took 20 years to become widespread or more. I mean, like, these were creeping up when I talked about Commodore 64. I mean, like, that was in early 80s.
Yeah.
And you're working up from there to the point where they were in a classroom. Like, I remember P90s being in a classroom, and that being the first time we had, like, what I would call a true lab, with computers that were at least semi close to what you would use in the real world. Traditionally schools had pretty backdated technology, and it's gotten a lot better over the years. But I love these efforts to support getting tools in their hands, because they're the people who are going to have to figure out what this looks like for tomorrow. And there are kids graduating today without AI skills. Like this year, kids are graduating without the skills they need to do works in. Like, you're going to need to know how to do this to work at McDonald's at some point in our future. And it's not that far
That's
out.
a
I mean,
bold claim.
but it is, but I think it is, and I don't mean that to minimize people who work at McDonald's. But I think I say that because I think it's important to know that jobs that right now require only a high school education are going to need some amount of AI experience in the future, I think.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, especially if you're using the tools like to manage the computer systems or,
Yeah.
work with robots that are making you food. Like, yeah, I could definitely see that being a thing.
Or if you work in an
Um,
Amazon warehouse where you're around robots and might have
yeah.
needs. I mean, I'm sure most of that's done remotely, but it's not a big stretch of the imagination to imagine there being a scenario where you need to know how to help a customer get their order in talking to an AI unit or something. I think
Yeah, it
there'll
could
be
be like
ways it's used we're not thinking of yet.
if the AI it takes the order and then the order is wrong, then you might have to go and dialogue with the AI and be like, "Can you check this order and see where you made a mistake?" And you have to be able
Yeah.
to prompt it in order to get the right information out. I can see that.
Or it's telling kitchen workers what to pull ahead based on the amount of demand they're seeing right now, and they know that at 5 o'clock it goes up every day. So it's telling you, go ahead and pull out this many burgers, pull these out, because we know that amount is going to get used. I mean, there are a variety of ways that I think we'll see this come into play that you're almost not thinking about unless you're hyper involved in a specific industry yet. Uh,
Yeah, that's true. Well, I think this is an interesting place to talk about, what are the takeaways here? We kind of broadly touched on a lot of things.
yeah,
I would also like to, at some point, touch on, the sort of counterfactual or the counterpoint of AI in education. But let's first cover, okay, so what are the actual ways that you can use AI? So let's go back to the whole mastery concept, right? How, I don't know how 2 hour learning does it, but how do you actually learn something? Like how do you create the neurons to spark in your brain to put two and two together to actually fundamentally learn something and make it stick, right?
yeah,
That's sort of the tricky question here. Like there's proving learning and then there's actually learning. So what is actual learning?
yeah, and that's such a good question. I don't even know if there is a clear answer. I'm certain somewhere out there a neurologist has a great answer to this, or a sociologist may. But I think there are definitely some tips we can give to help you better do that on your own and to use AI in a responsible way, like Grant's mentioning here, to help you get that benefit from it, as opposed to maybe dulling your intellect a little bit, if that's if that turns out to be a genuine concern, as we see that spread out and get tested in larger sample sizes over larger periods of time. And
Uh-huh.
I think
Uh-huh.
my first recommendation is that you should absolutely struggle first. Don't
Yeah.
don't immediately dive into AI when you're trying to learn about something. I mean, obviously that depends on the subject. Like if you want to know how to cook a baked potato in a microwave, absolutely just ask. But
Yeah.
if what you want to do is have a decent understanding of a concept that kind of confuses you, or you don't trust your judgment on it, wrestle with the problem first, whether that's for 5 minutes or 30 minutes or however long you're comfortable with. It doesn't matter. But I think it's better to use the bot as your sparring partner than maybe your ghostwriter, if that makes sense, for lack of a better phrase.
It does. It does make sense. And so, for context, we wrote about all of this stuff on the Neuron, and we have a nice long, what'd you say, 40-page blog post. Not actually, but it's quite long, where it's me wrestling with the problem of AI in education. And there's a couple takeaways that I had. One of them, it was related to Corey's point right there, which is, you know, first you should probably have like some sort of framework for, okay, is this something that I actually want to learn, or is this something I just need to get done right now very quickly?
Yeah, like,
Now,
what do
if
I
you're a
already
student,
know? Yeah.
but if you're a student in school, it'll be very tempting for you to say, I have this schoolwork that's done that needs to get done. I just need to get this done. That is the opposite point of school. Okay. I know you
Yeah.
want to get through it so you can go do other stuff, but you need to actually try to learn. And the reason I say that is because I've been reading this book called Make It Stick, where to Corey, your point about like neurologists basically trying to, what does the science say about how we actually learn? And in school, a lot of times the thought is like, oh, you need to read it multiple times and underline it and practice memorizing it, and that is what actually leads to learning. And it's actually not the case based on the studies and the science that have been done. In fact, some of the ways that is actually the best way to learn stuff is not what you think it would be. It's actually quite counterintuitive. So we can get into a couple of those, but to answer this question, struggling with it makes a lot of sense because there's this thing called desirable difficulties. And desirable difficulties basically, you want something in a range where here's where you are now and you know what you don't know. And to learn the next level of something you need to know, it needs to be just hard enough that you can build on what you already know in order to get there and put it together.
Without
Think of like
overreaching
playing.
in some cases.
Exactly. And so the metaphor that worked for me, I think this might have been from a different book entirely, Atomic Habits, but basically think about playing basketball versus LeBron James.
Yeah.
That's not going to be fun because he's going to kick your ass, right?
Yeah.
He's going to be way too good. He's going to be way too good at the game. You're not going to have fun. He's not going to have fun. In the same way, think about playing basketball against a 5-year-old kid. That's
Yeah.
also not going to be fun for you because you're way better than the kid and you're just going to thrash him, right?
Yeah.
So you want things to be in a desirable level of difficulty where it's like I'm going up against a partner who's just as good as me or right there on the same line, and I can kind of struggle and it feels like it's possible for me to get to the next level. So that's why you want to struggle with it and try and solve it for
Makes me think
yourself
of,
first.
the thousands of hours in my life I've spent cussing at a guitar. Trying to learn some song or some lick that I can hear and I can't materialize real well. Like there's sometimes there's just something you're struggling with and you're stuck on, and you can get a mental block there. Uh, but that struggle is, it's fun because you know what's at the other end of it.
Yeah, we talked about this in the blog post that Simon Sinek has a good, I guess a good interview on, I forget the podcast, but we'll link to it, where he basically says the struggle is the point. Like he's a better writer because of the struggle that it took him to write the book. Like he is better because he took all this time and mental energy trying to put it together. So that's not to say that you can't use AI to help you learn, but that's to say like you need to try and do as much as you can yourself before you pull in a tutor or a teacher. It would just be the same way if you were in school. Like you should try and actually put it together and get
Yeah,
the answer before you raise your hand and ask a question. I mean, kind
absolutely.
of common sense, but it's just applying that to learning.
You raise your hand because you don't get it. You know,
Yeah.
like like
And try to identify what exactly is the part you don't get. Like here's the part I do get, but
yes.
then you said this, so what am I missing in the middle? Which, to your point, a tutor who knows you well, an AI tutor, would be able to help explain that to you in a way that's personal to you, that
Yeah.
that then is relatable back to you. We're not there yet, but there are some prompts that you can use to help you kind of create this
Ooh,
with
I
the
like it.
tools that are available now. So Ethan Malik, who we shouted out earlier, he shared these creative common prompts from Wharton, and let me go ahead and pull one up here.
I'll bet I shout Ethan Mollick out twice a day to someone. Everything he shares is so valuable.
Yeah, he's really great. Okay, so here's one. So this is quite literally called a prompt text. This is a tutor prompt. Sorry, this is quite literally called the tutor. And there's a prompt text here. So this is what you'd put into ChatGPT. You would say the goal. This is a tutoring exercise in which you play the role of an AI tutor, and you will help a student learn more about a topic of their choice. So it goes on a little bit more there. Then it has a persona. In this scenario, you play an AI tutor, kind of reiterating what was said above. Then there's a narrative. The student is introduced to the AI tutor who asks a set of initial questions to understand what the student wants to learn, the student's learning level, and prior knowledge about the topic. So it sort of prompts the AI to ask you questions to try and figure out what you're trying to learn and what your level of understanding is. And then it goes through a series of steps. So, gather information, you introduce yourself, you ask the students the following questions. Then it tells you a list of tasks to do and what not to do. And then it gives specific instructions about how to tutor the student adapting to their responses. And this is all tailored and made by people who are professional full-time teachers.
Yeah.
So they've thought this through on how this will actually help you um, learn instead of just saying, give me the answer to this problem.
Yeah, and that's super valuable. That's such an intriguing way to look at it, and I always lean back. We always talk about Grant and I joke regularly about how we're gonna bring advanced voice mode on one day and do a real good interview. And
We need to do
and
that.
we are going to do that. We just haven't yet. But I we haven't even discussed the value that could bring to education in itself. Like, not specifically advanced voice mode, but the ability to talk it back and forth. Because, like, some people are better readers, some people are better spoken, some people need to put their hands on a thing. And I think by having both of those avenues, man, that's gonna open some doors. It should.
Oh, I've been thinking about that for years. Like the fact that text-based chatting, like the chat interface, is the primary way we deal with AI is like the first problem. Like, some people need, like artists, for example, they don't want to put in text to get art out. Like that's why they hate
Yeah.
AI image generators,
Yeah.
because they are artists. They want to be able to create. They want to be able to put their hands on it, get their hands dirty, move stuff around. Apply that to learning, right?
Yeah.
Same goes for video. Same goes for people who would rather talk and are more audio visual learners. Like we have the tools to make all of this stuff. It just has to be intentionally applied, I think.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think you really hit the nail on the head there. Um, Something else I think worth mentioning here, another one of our kind of key takeaways is that I think pace is more important than seat time. We've got to get away from the seat time mentality that finances education. I think that creates a lot of problems. I'd love to see us, pairing AI generated quizzes with mastery checkpoints somehow to allow students to advance at their own pace instead of some arbitrary date. I mean, maybe the deal is like, listen, you're going to go learn stuff till you're 18, and that's just what it is. And it's going to be all kinds of stuff. It's going to be things you want to learn, things you need to learn, things that you maybe don't want to learn, but maybe you should. But um, maybe we can make some of the boring stuff a little better. I mean, like economics was rough, man.
That was not a desirable difficulty for you. That was an undesirable
Uh,
difficulty.
it was interesting, but it was just dry. It was really dry, and it was really, sometimes it's a teacher. Sometimes you don't jive with the right teacher and student relationship, you just struggle to communicate, just like with any people in the world, and, um, And I think this can help when that's the case in the long run. Like, I don't think this is a thing that's gonna happen tomorrow, but it's hopefully around the corner.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about time-based, I guess, like, seat-based, could you define seat-based before I move on?
Yeah.
What is
When
that
I'm
seat
talking
time, I
about
mean?
seat-based, I'm meaning that kind of everything a school does centers often and by necessity. It's not their fault, it's not their choice, but it has to center around this idea that um, you're going to be funded due to X amount of time in chairs plus test scores. You know,
Mm,
there are other factors, but at the core, those are 2 that are very limiting, like, and trying to ensure the idea behind it is good, trying to ensure students at small schools are as prepared for college as students at big schools, but they simultaneously create a lot of problems, and when I think about time in chairs, I'm talking about, like, their rate they're funded at for even a day is based on, number of hours of students in a classroom. It's not based on, GPA. It's that and generally standardized test scores. And I have probably oversimplified that. And I am certain there is a an education PhD or teacher that's going to eat me alive in the comments, and I sincerely apologize in advance. I mean it to be supportive of you.
yeah, yeah, that's fair. And just for the record, neither of us are teachers, so obviously we're talking about something that we've researched and thought a lot about. We've been through the education system, but we are not teachers, so
Yes,
take that
that's correct.
disclaimer with you. But yeah, okay, that makes sense. So I guess then my comment is, so for to your point about it being more about mastery checkpoints and more about actually learning.
Yeah.
Alpha schools, one method for how they do that, where they're using, learning is fixed at, at 100% learned. It's not based on time. So that's one way that you could possibly do that. Another is, to your point, schools all over have a bunch of different problems or challenges, let's say, where you're located. How much tax revenue is in your district, how funded or underfunded your school is. All of that plays a big part and limits the, capabilities or the access of the students who go there and the teachers who go there by extension or work there by extension. So having a tool that sort of brings the baseline level of, like, attention that a teacher can pay to a student to all students everywhere across as many schools as possible would be good, because now you're not limited by having one good teacher who you really, connect with. You can now have, at least a system, might not be the same as a teacher, but it's an augmented system that can connect to you and meet you where you are and help you. And I think in that way, you can get closer to do a mastery system, because you can have some sort of, AI or programmatic way of assessing a person's level of learning and mastery. Whereas before, testing was the best way to do that.
Yeah,
I think testing should be a test of learning, not a proof of learning, if that makes sense.
yes. And I don't even pretend to know what that needs to look like
Yeah,
other than
that's a challenge for other people who have the skill set, like, the
yeah.
guy who gave the quote for OpenAI. That's a challenge for the teachers to figure out, but that this is the where we're at, essentially.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. And, this as we've discussed before, these aren't tools that are gonna go away. These aren't tools that are going to get worse with time. Like, it's highly doubtful that there's a scenario where LLMs begin performing worse. Like, you've seen the curves are sharp and they keep going up, and we keep discussing when that's gonna stop happening. And so far, they just
Yep.
they just they just keep going more vertical, and,
We'll see this month with
we'll
GPT-5, but
see.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
agree.
hopefully, by next week, we're talking about GPT-5, so if we're lucky, we'll see.
So I mentioned make it stick. I do want to talk about this because as we're presenting these ideas to everyone who's listening, who is thinking about education, who maybe wants to use AI to learn or even in their work, I think that this is important to help us use AI in a way that actually works with the way that we learn. because I think we need to design these systems to go off of the science that we have. And I'm sure there will be more studies that are done in the future. We'll learn even more, but this is something that's really important to me, and I want to share this with everyone, see if it's helpful. So, like I mentioned, there's a book called Make It Stick. We'll include a link in the description. So it's called, the full title is The Science of Successful Learning. And there's kind of four main tactics that I've taken away from reading this book that are helpful and, like I said, counterintuitive to learning with AI. So the first one is retrieval practice. So this is actually testing. So actively trying to recall information from memory is, as you might guess, much harder than simply rereading it, but it actually strengthens your brain better. So, for
Nice.
instance, the group that used AI in the MIT study, they didn't have to retrieve their information at all. They didn't have to retrieve any information. They didn't go to a website, read it, and and then have to remember it and put it in the essay.
Yeah.
They just had the AI get the information for them. They didn't remember it. They didn't retrieve it, so that didn't stick. Then there's also a tactic called spacing. Spacing is where you actually spread out your learning over time, which forces you to forget and then therefore retrieve the information, which is more effective than cramming, which is trying to learn everything all at once the night before something is
Yeah.
due. Yeah, sure. You might
Never
short-term
done
memory
it.
memorize it. Yeah. I did that a lot. In fact,
Same.
famously, one time in college for a psychology class that I took, I crammed the night before, slept for 20 minutes, went ace the test. So whatever happened, but I don't remember a word of it, I'm sure. So it's much better to actually read something and space out your learning. So like actually like, take a break and go try to learn something, come back, a week later and try and revisit it. Uh, Related to that is a third concept, which is called interleaving,
Okay.
which is mixing up different subjects or problems, which can feel confusing. Like, wait, I'm trying to learn this topic over here, and then I'm also trying to learn this related topic, but now I'm getting them confused. But it actually trains the brain to recognize patterns and hopefully select the right strategy for how to connect those ideas.
Oh,
And so this is
cool.
actually really important. So not only are you trying to retrieve information and spacing it out, so doing it over time, you're trying to learn multiple things at one time that are connected and basically helping you connect all this stuff and try and
Yeah.
build it into the world model that you already have in your head, right? And number four is generation. So actively generating the answer yourself, even if you get it wrong, helps you learn the material better than simply if you're given the correct answer.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting at the keyboard and you're trying to recall something from a week ago, it's better for you to write what you like your best guess and and try and get it right, even if you get part of it wrong or all of it wrong, than it is to go back and reread the answer
Oh,
and then
wow.
try and memorize it that way.
Interesting. Sort of a
Yeah.
directional pathways kind of thing or something. That's fascinating. I need to read
So
that.
my Oh, it's a great book. I highly recommend everyone read it. I'll shout out the authors in the description. Sorry, I didn't remember their names. There's three of them, so we'll put that in the we'll put that in the show notes. But the way that I suggest that you use this with AI is so when you're actively trying to learn something with AI, you should first use the prompt as your attempts to figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
Like, actually, like you said, struggle for 20 to 30 minutes. Actually sit there, define what you know, define what you don't know, actively try and struggle and wrestle with the problem, and do the hard part first of generating it from scratch. Like, try to actually solve your problem before you go
Yeah.
to AI. And then you pull in the AI with all of your
Yeah.
basically your notes. And you could do like two or three things at once that you're trying to learn at once.
Yeah.
And take that to the AI and then work backwards from that way.
Wow. That's a good call. That's a really good call. I use it in prompts a lot as a, like, "Hey, I'm trying to better understand this. I know this happens. I know this occurred. I know this, but I feel like I'm missing a step here. What is missing from what I've given you, or am I entirely wrong?" I
Yeah.
I have a lot of
You could
prompts
use
that look
this
like that.
You could use the Socratic method, right? You could
Yep.
say like, don't give me the solution, but ask me questions that get me closer to it. Or like, here's my argument, vigorously challenge it, expose its weakest points. Like, I'm working on this problem, A, B, and C.
Yes.
What are the principles that connect them all? Like just really like actually try and learn and don't just have it give you an answer.
I think this is a good spot to kind of take the next step toward the end today. I think one of the big takeaways here is that if all we get are new rules, students are always going to find a fresh way to dodge them, to cheat. It's called the whack-a-mole effect. It's a real thing. I think moving forward, it's going to be important to, design assignments that make honest AI use a part of the school day. Give these kids what they need to go into a new world they're not quite ready for yet, not sure how to wrap up. Um, but overall, I think as teachers learn how to teach with AI, hopefully cheating will drop and real learning will go up, and it'll hopefully be a win for a lot of people. I mean, I know that's very pie in the sky view, but my hope is that this ends in a way that means teachers are more successful, students are more successful. And I think if those two things happen, AI will have done us a good service. How about round robin time before we call it a day? I have a question. Are you ready? You ready for this?
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
What class do you wish an AI tutor could have rescued you from in school, and why?
I really wish that I had gotten further along in math than I did. Like you mentioned factoring earlier. So because now as an adult I'm fascinated by math and I love using it. So and physics too.
Yeah.
So I wish that there was an AI tutor not to make the class go away, but to engage with me on those topics when earlier when I was a younger man, I was more interested in creative things and not school hard sciences.
Yeah.
And I wish that I had something that could connect the dots between why you would want to care and learn about these things
Yeah.
more when you had all the time in the world.
That was a struggle for me too. That's fair. I think for me, the class I would love to have been rescued from is probably honestly, it's college algebra. College algebra was hard, and it took up a lot of time. I survived and made it through, made a good grade, um, but it was particularly difficult. I was a non-trad student who, like, had a few years off before college. So coming back in and taking college algebra was a bear. It was just tough, and, I think that's probably the class I would absolutely have loved to have had a good AI tutor in. Like, we had tutor resources available, but, eh, the ability to learn it this way, I think, would have made it stick better and maybe kept me from stopping there.
Yeah, that's fair. I think like all this talk with AI in the classroom, it makes me think like there like if it's used well and it's helpful for students, what can the teachers do better now? And I think like there's this concept of the zone of proximal development,
Mhm.
and that like basically there's a learning sweet spot between what the students can do alone versus what they can do with teachers.
Yeah.
And so the giving teachers the ability to read the room and adjust on the fly, they can notice confusion, they can provide different examples. Like a lot of AI can do that, but the AI might not recognize, at least not yet, that the student is struggling. So like for you and me in like a classroom setting, like if we had a individual personal tutor who was watching us and seeing like, hey, you're struggling with this concept, like let me focus in on where you're having the problem instead of a teacher who's has to focus on all 30 kids at one time, that's really powerful, and that can save you from,
WTF is Mrs. Alvin talking about? You know,
yeah, yeah. And it can help teachers do that better too, because now instead of having one TA who's maybe helping the kids in class, you have like 30
yeah,
TAs. You have a TA for every kid. So the teachers can even spend even more time and use the human intuition to help kids when they're
yeah,
struggling with the AI tutor. So
exactly.
I just think I think when done well, it can be a very virtuous cycle.
I think so too. That's
If
a
done
good
well.
way to put it. On that note, Everyone, thanks so much for joining us today here on the Neuron Podcast. We had a ton of fun, and I'm confident that left to our own devices, Grant and I could ramble on about this for at least 3 more hours, given that we have no authority on the subject of education, but we are absolutely giving it our best, and what we hope, is kind of something really good that could come out of this in the long run.
What we lack in authority, we make up in passion.
That's right. And please, if you're watching, wherever you're watching this, on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, please like, comment, share, subscribe. It really helps us out a lot and helps us continue bringing these to you. We thank you for listening and look forward to next time. Farewell for now, humans.